So we're here at Legal Week 2019 and Heretic and Gravity Stack's Media Suite podcast. Thank you to those two companies for sponsoring. And here with Brad Kolacinski, who may have the only name harder to pronounce than Abramowitz.
You said it perfectly.
Abramowitz took me a while.
Kolacinski too. Yeah. Well played.
So Brad is your official title is Principal at Control Risk.
That's right. Yep.
And talk to me a little bit about your background. My favorite question: how did you get into e-discovery?
Yeah. So I have an interesting road to.
I assume that in fourth grade you wrote down, "I want to be in litigation support."
I want to be an e-discovery consultant when I grow up. I was that and fireman, and e-discovery consultant went out. It's interesting. I was actually a film major at UC Santa Barbara, and went into animation, 3D animation, forensic animation, visual effects out of undergrad. Worked in Hollywood, got to work on a lot of really interesting projects and a lot of A-list directors and whatnot. The company I worked for was a Cambridge.
A-list directors? Come on, who?
Lucas worked on some stuff with Skywalker Ranch.
Were you about to bury the lead that you've worked with George Lucas films? Yeah. Were we going to go through the entire podcast with you holding back on Star Wars? And you've been to Lucas Ranch?
I've been to Lucas Ranch, yeah. I had to demo 3D animation software to George Lucas, so that was a crowning achievement.
That is incredible. Wait a second. So, I used to live out in San Francisco. Yeah. We'd go out to Marin County.
Right.
I think we kind of drove by it one time.
Lucas Valley Road, which is not actually named after George Lucas, believe it or not. It was already called Lucas Valley Road when he moved in.
Oh, how
very serendipitous.
Yeah, how serendipitous indeed. Yeah. So I know that they filmed that entire scene where they were going through. They're going through the trees on those, those bikes, whatever those were. Those is there a name for those? Are they pods or?
I'm not enough.
One of the greatest scenes in movie history, and it was done in his backyard.
Right. Okay. All the trees there, and in Marin, there's a lot of redwood forest. So, that was a great experience, obviously, and worked with some other like Ron Howard on Angels and Demons, and so got to it. There's another whole podcast we could do on the fact that part of my career also enabled me to be Michael Jackson's kids' summer school teacher, where I'd go to Las Vegas every week and then teach them animation and filmmaking. But that's another podcast.
That is another. Sarah, book Brad. We're gonna get Brad the clock in Vegas. We're gonna book Brad on that.
Yeah,
one.
We'll do it in Vegas. It'll be full circle. We can go visit the old house and
wow,
see Harrison Prince and Blanket.
That's amazing.
So, back to how I became
so obviously from animation and working with George Lucas to Control Risk. That's the obvious transition.
So the animation company I was working for started doing visualization, simulation, and training type work, and started doing work for law enforcement and military and kind of special forces type agencies. And the legal sector took notice of the kind of capabilities for 3D animation for demonstrative evidence purposes. And so started working on some interesting kind of high stakes litigation. I ended up leading that division, worked on some Hurricane Katrina litigation, a lot of medical malpractice, pharma, med device type cases, a lot of patent litigation where there's high stakes and they can warrant spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on demonstrative evidence. And so really scientific animation was doing that type of work for a couple of years, and the company dissolved and kind of took their ball and went home back to Cambridge, England, and got recruited into this space in about 2008. Really kind of looking at computer forensics, discovery, data analytics as a necessary evil is how it was pitched to me. They're like, you look at what you're doing in forensic animation, that represents 1% of cases that go to trial, and about 1% of those can really justify hundreds of thousands of dollars on animation. So I took the plunge into litigation support really at that point on the more data side, and never looked back.
Never looked back. So, you first of all, you blew my mind by dropping Blanket Jackson. It's gonna take me a couple of minutes to come around to that, but just going into that, it's interesting. You came to the industry post paper,
right?
How do you think that affects your sort of view of the industry, how you conduct business? Because a lot of people kind of were in it in that transition period.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if someone who came into it completely post paper, where we're entirely digital, how that affected your view of the market, and how I'm sure you've thought about that in terms of others who maybe were in in the paper days?
Yeah, and I think it's funny now. At control risks, a lot of the work we do is cross-border investigations work, and so paper comes up occasionally, and we still see it. And we'll work with partners to handle that aspect of the workflow. But I think in some ways, it allows me to really just be laser focused on the ESI and not think about kind of the pain points of LDD and bibliographic coding and all the offshore work that was done on the kind of high volume scanning projects and weird load files out of scanning software into concordance and summation. I kind of, one of the first firms I worked at kind of was still hanging on to the paper business, and so
okay.
I kind of got that exposure whether I wanted it or not. But I think it's, I have a little bit of that background and have seen that part of the industry, but I think obviously ESI is the core business for us now.
Sure. You're here at Legal Week, which I know a lot of people refer to as e-discovery week.
Right.
Certainly heavy, but I'm curious. You're looking around.
Mm-hmm.
What's caught your eye? And obviously, you're here obviously to sell as well.
Sure.
But you're also here to look at potential assets for your own business and
right.
for control risk. So, what are you looking at where you think, there could be some opportunity here. This is something that we should look at more closely. These are trends that we should pay attention to.
Right. Yeah. For us, again, because so much of the work we do is investigative in nature. We certainly do litigation support, dispute work domestically, but a lot of what we do is international, and a lot of our investigative work often involves kind of, I would say, non-traditional ESI sources.
Non-traditional ESI sources.
So a lot of structured data. At least in terms of the context of your traditional, kind of relativity workflows where you're just looking at laptop and desktop and email data, file server data, what I would call unstructured data. We're dealing a lot with databases, SAP, Oracle, ERP systems, CRM data, payroll records, HR databases, general ledger, really anything where a lot of what we do is the kind of follow the money type fraud, bribery, corruption, anti-money laundering, price fixing, bid rigging type cases where your core evidence really is going to be looking at the transaction level and then kind of looking at the emails to corroborate and find evidence around suspicious payment to a vendor.
So interesting. I was just talking with the folks at Relativity about Trace,
mm-hmm.
and they have a sort of like internal team,
right.
kind of like a startup within a bigger company,
right.
which is Relativity is obviously experimenting with a variety of ways to reinvest in their platform.
Right.
And we're here in Heretic suite. Obviously, Heretic is one form of that, which is an entirely independent company. Trace is internal Relativity. They've got other things like that are going on.
Right.
Are these tools that you're looking at in the market, and what are the other ones besides Trace?
Yeah, so Trace, we're very familiar with Jordan and what the team over there at Relativity are building with Trace, and it kind of aligns with the proactive compliance, fraud monitoring type work that we do as well. So we've certainly looked at Trace and have co-pitched with them to clients in Brazil. Heretic is certainly another. Contract AI is a very hot space right now. We've had a couple POCs with Heretic for clients in the pharma world who are looking at Brexit risk analysis.
Sure.
So trying to understand, hey, we've got 100,000 contracts. Can you help us identify, which of those contracts might be, going to have issues when Brexit, if it ever does happen? How can you help us find those contracts that are going to need to be repapered? We've looked at NextLP, BrainSpace, continue to be interested in what both of those folks are doing, more in traditional kind of relativity analytics workflows. We're Relativity Shop just announced this week that we're going with Rel 1 as well. And so we'll be deploying Rel 1.
Deploying Rel 1, and what went into that decision? Because obviously, I'm sure there's relations with the company, but
sure.
At that point, you could have looked. You are Relativity Shop, but there
right.
are other options on the market.
Yeah.
CS Disco just raised a mega round.
Yeah.
What went into your evaluation that in choosing Rel 1?
So, obviously there's a lot of SaaS benefits in terms of security and scalability that I think are well documented. But for us, it was really we're a consulting firm. We want to remain focused on how do we help our clients get through investigations, get through large volumes of data, and not necessarily have to worry about the kind of back office functions of data center co-location management, maintenance, IT security, all of those things.
Sure.
So being able to kind of offload that, working closely with our partnership with Relativity, to have Rail 1 to kind of take care of some of those things so that we can really just focus on the innovation, building custom applications in the Rail 1 environment, deploying tools like NextLP and BrainSpace in Rail 1 to complement those workflows. And then going back to kind of the structured data, comment, kind of look at workflows where we're bringing in structured data red flag queries into Relativity and being able to have our forensic accountants kind of do their analysis in Relativity. So that kind of is, to answer some of your questions, I think a core theme for us here at Legal Week is just bringing together a lot of what are traditionally disparate, siloed investigative work streams. You may have your forensics team who's looking at mobile device data and imaging with Cellbrite, looking at Cellbrite reports, looking at the IM chat text data, the WeChat, where you often find very fruitful evidence because people have wisened up to commit fraud in email. They don't do that so much anymore. It's now on the mobile device. So mobile device is really important. We've kind of got a lot of custom tools that we're building and looking at off-the-shelf solutions too to better be able to review and analyze what's coming off of mobile devices in Relativity. And I know that obviously Rel 1, coming in a couple months, will have their short message solution for reviewing and all the way through to production. But we're doing some really interesting things too with like looking at geolocation data off of phones and be able to map that with Tableau in Relativity, bringing structured data findings into Relativity as well so that you can start to build context. So you start to see, all right, there's a WeChat message between Zach and Brad about the payment they're going to make to the third-party construction firm to collude around this bid that's coming up on this big hydroelectric dam somewhere in the Amazon. But there's a vendor payment the next day, an around dollar amount. And if you have kind of traditionally those things are not in the same universe, that context is really up to counsel to try and make those connections. And historically, that's how it's been done. But we're really just trying to bring all that data into one world so that the poor senior associate has to kind of try and make those connections. It's easier for them to see, actually, this timeline's all here together. I can see the WeChat message. I can see the emails. I can see the vendor payments. I can see.
It sounds like a lot of what went into the choice for you is being able to build on top, being able to layer, which obviously, I think Relativity is certainly known for.
Sure.
Do you now look at what are your thoughts on the possibilities for building on top of that platformization,
right?
Which is it's a certainly a buzzword term in legal, but what does it mean for control risks? What is platformization, and what is the ability to do things on top of Relativity for you as a company?
Yeah, I think it's, we really see, because we're not a purely an e-discovery firm, we do other things, kidnap, ransom, and extortion responses where we got our start in the 70s. So Cadoras has a very kind of disparate, broad offering really across a lot of different risks for corporate clients. So we look at really Relativity as a platform and Rail 1 as a platform for building solutions that aren't going to just solve challenges related to forensics and discovery, disputes and investigations, but compliance, like what we're doing with Trace, but also security and control risks. As I mentioned, we kind of have this 40-year history of being a top kind of crisis management security consulting firm, and that has taken on new meanings, and certainly there's a cyber element to that. But we're doing a lot of really interesting work with large multinationals, helping them to aggregate data from disparate checks. So we're doing work with large companies that have what are called GSOCs, kind of Global Security Operation Command Centers. And it's exactly what you might picture, a bunch of guys in a room, guys and gals, looking at big LED screens, kind of command center of red flags and alerts and closed circuit television.
With the earphones.
Of course,
and the mouthpiece
right,
too.
A lot of walkie-talkies and people running in and out. And so we're actually using data analytics to pull in data from CCTV screens, from the alarms that, hey, there's one of the back doors on our manufacturing facility in Shanghai is open, there's an alarm. And there's all these things that have always come in different channels, and we're using tools like Relativity to build custom dashboards to pull all of that data in and then create visualizations and essentially red flag alerts to prioritize those things. And there's a machine learning element too, so you can start to learn over time that 98% of the time we get that alert, there's really nothing there. It's kind of a false positive. So let's deprioritize it. We still need to look in and make sure the door gets closed, but it's not a critical issue. But these types of issues that we're seeing come through, maybe it's an IP security type leak, and you've got potential remote access to a data center or something, that's going to get flagged up,
Sure.
And escalated and investigated really quickly. So I guess to kind of answer the question, for us, it's not just an e-discovery play per se, but it's how can we use Relativity as a platform to really solve and leverage technology for all of the things that we do, political risk analysis, crisis management, security consulting,
Well, Andrew Sage would be thrilled to hear about all the different use cases you all have for Relativity and for Rel 1. So we'll have to keep in touch because I'm curious to follow, the path of Rel 1 over the course of the next year and what that is going to mean for platformization with Relativity. So, Brad, thanks for coming and joining. Thanks for hanging out, and looking forward to seeing you at future events.
This is great. Thanks, Zach.